And those are our new doggies. Thank you
Woof.
for thank you for joining us at Cerberus at the Gate. We're very happy to have James Davison and Bella Marcella with us today. They have been successfully active as collaborators for accountability and restoring normalcy to Canadian and British Columbia public life and government. Very happy to have you both aboard, and we're excited to hear your story. We have kind of sort of a bullet list to go through, but I'm only going to track that loosely. The rest of the show will be for James and Bella to take as they see fit. On occasion, Peyman and Andre will pick in and have questions or comments. And at the 60-minute mark, Peyman will bring up flagged questions that will be related to the content. Nice and organized and structured, because I never have a plan before I go into battle, especially when I know that the plan is no longer useful because we're on air. So to you, James and Bella, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you for having us on here today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, guys. You're all excellent spokesmen, and we appreciate being here.
We're excited to hear your origin story. What are the sparks that brought you into public life? I believe we're going back to around 2020 when the COVID madness started. So we want to pick up there and take us on a journey.
Well, I'm going to be a gentleman and defer to the lady first. You know, it's.
Yeah, let's go back to 2019 as the year was closing out, and media started to raise the COVID agenda, so to speak. The theater. That's a good way of putting it. So I was working as a health administrative assistant at the time, and my department was very tied into the PHO office over in Victoria, the public health office, the good Dr. Bonnie Henry. And so I was getting, because I managed the emails for the team, I started getting all the emails and what was going to be coming down the line. And my ears started to perk, and my neck hair started to stand, spidey senses tingling. And I'm like, there's something going on here, because where I was working was just one-sided agenda and narrative to the people that they service. And there was 90,000 at the time. And, I was friends with somebody in the local area who was speaking out on social media. And, I was kind of like, oh, that sounds kind of a little bit off. But I started to tune in a little bit more, and my light started coming on. And I got involved behind the scenes with this group called Celebration of Freedoms and Rights. And I did the admin for the Facebook group. I organized all of the events right across Canada. And so I would do all the posters for the events in all the different cities, and I would go into Facebook and I would upload them, create the events. And then at the time, Facebook used to let you see the different cities that your members were a part of. I'd pull them in and put them specifically to that event. So that was my early start, standing out here in Guildford at the street corner of 104 and 152 with my signs. That was my start into activism. And, it was really unintentional, but I'm not one to be quiet. I will speak up. And I started coming out with these facts and data that I would research while I'm at work. And it kind of started me on my role. I started working with Hugs Over Masks, which was an organization that started back east. I became the leader for Canada. I mentored the staff across the country in weekly meetings. I brought Hugs Over Masks here to BC. We started our first group in Surrey and Tawasin, and we grew it to 12 chapters around the province. So a lot of touring, a lot of organizing, and a lot of working with other groups around this province. And boy, I tell you, it take a toll. I started working with the Freedom Rally World back in 2020 as well. And that was organizing the mega rallies in downtown Vancouver. And I think I got to June of 2021, and I'm like, oh God, I have to take a step back. And I pretty much took the summer off, but there was one sparking event that kicked off Stand United. And that's when Trudeau came, sorry to say the name, guys, came to Surrey to make a announcement for affordable housing in a very high priced neighborhood. And I'm like, I'm so there. And, that's, I have to say, was quite the spark that lit the fire and kind of got us rolling. That's, where I come into all of this, and Stand United was shortly thereafter. Take it away, James. It's my story.
Just to quickly follow up that, we got it activated right away. I mean, I just saw the vehicle that they used to change the rules and the legislation. Putting us into these emergency circumstances was a red light for me that said, first off, I'm comfortable moving forward. Don't see the need to shut down small businesses and let corporations thrive and these different things. And it was pretty obvious to me that it wasn't what they said it was. And yeah, so I got kind of going to some rallies. Susan Stanfield, she had end the lockdowns, and that was as early as late March of 2020. I did my very first protest, and I started going down the rabbit hole and learning more and realizing that, yeah, it's up to us to make a difference. So Stand United was inevitable to happen throughout the different groups that we had in British Columbia. I'm proud of everyone who stood forth and put their name out there and built something that we could come together, like a celebration of freedoms and rights, and the lockdowns. There was no new normal, hugs over masks. There was a lot of different groups that were doing different things. And I just looked at it like I had something to offer with strategy. And I thought we needed to be, like at the media, because they were the ones who were really spinning everything for us to have to, do as we're told. So that's it. Stand United happened.
You have any thoughts or questions, André, Peyman?
Well, I do have maybe one question. You're talking about activism, how you got involved. Marcella, you were involved because you were involved in the healthcare system. So you were a little bit suspicious at the beginning. And James, you have this, what you describe yourself as, a tendency to involve yourself in grassroots movement. How it was perceived, let's say 2019, 2021, because the narrative changed very fast in Canada, how it was perceived for the people around you, colleagues, friends, family, because you were maybe starting to be aware that something was wrong. So was it received, or was it, did you face any resistance?
For me, one of the things I noticed was the media was pumping up the fear. And of course, you've got people masking everywhere, and we had all the social distancing and no hugging in public and all sorts of things, which was really dehumanizing and taking away from the human connection. Things that we as humans need and thrive on is the touch, and it's being close to our loved ones. And right away, it started creating divide in families, in friend groups, and even at work. So where I was, I was on the OSH committee, and we had an overzealous chair who wanted to implement everything that was coming out. And because my direct supervisor was a registered nurse, I talked to her and I said, look, this is going too far. He's wanting us to stand at the door and take the temperature of everybody coming into our organization. I'm like, I'm not here to do that. If you're sick, stay home. That's common sense. It's reasonable. It's logical. If you're not feeling well, take your temperature, stay home. You don't need to go out in public. I mean, that to me is just simple. And, and then wanting to full on mask everybody at the office, and having hand sanitizer at everybody's desk. And it was starting to really get out of control, because my department, and of one in the office, was responsible for shipping pallets of hand sanitizer around British Columbia, pallets of masks and gloves, and creating promotional materials to support what the government was telling everybody to be fearful of. And my brain is going one-sided, one-sided, one-sided. What they weren't telling us are some options that we can do to help ourselves. You know, stay inside, stay safe, stay home. And nobody's outside. It was like a ghost town out there. And I'm out there every single day because mental health and nature go hand in hand. You want to decrease people's anxiety? Go for a walk. And these were some of the things that were really pumping at me. And because of the nature of where I worked previously within government, I started to do some research on the statistics on domestic violence, on suicide crisis lines, because our organization just opened one up, and drug overdoses and suicide rates. And I followed the statistics from the beginning. So anytime that I spoke, I was always that data girl. I always had that with me. And one of the other things I focused on were businesses. How many businesses were shutting their doors, were going bankrupt, could no longer afford their staffing because you're only allowed so many people in there. And so I followed all of those data. And I would present those because those things weren't beneficial to the province. I saw a lot of collateral damage by these stay home to stay safe mandates that the government was putting in. One of the other things I didn't say earlier is that in 2020, I ran in the provincial election as an independent candidate in Cloverdale. And going on to the debates, they're asking questions. How can we work through COVID? And I was the only one on there with counter everything that the government had done. We want businesses thriving. Well, how do we do that? Well, how about we drop the mandates and let people get back to work? It's on record. The only one standing up and speaking against what was happening. You got to look at the toll that it took financially and emotionally on businesses and families and friends. It affected everybody, and not always in a positive way.
So you're right. Nothing was really measured. We know the level of bankruptcy, the level of anxiety and distress that was created during this era. We're in 2026 practically now, and the question is also for James. How do you see the movement now, practically 6 years after what I call the PSYOP or global PSYOP? Did we progress?
I think so. Unfortunately, people have to learn from mistakes. Most of us learn the most from our mistakes, and I think that everybody is feeling at least the economical crunch now as inflation in every aspect of our life keeps going up. And as a business person myself, like, I don't have any employees. I've never had an employee. I've had my company for 14 years. And I'm actually the Consumer Choice Award winning company for the last 4 years. And I've won a lot of awards for my service. But I understand that these businesses have to compete with inflation in their wages with less money circulating through the economy. There's a lose-lose situation there, and everything's being pushed towards corporation and control because of what happened in COVID. So over these last 6 years, a lot of people who have had something taken away from them, they're a lot more coherent to probably not being so compliant in the future. And hopefully that's the lesson learned from. Look at it like you're driving cars and they're going off the cliff. Okay, so you're in a medical crisis emergency, and you fire your medical professionals because they don't want to be involved in what they consider a solution is this alternative to keep your job. You have to do the jab. So how is that benefiting people if we're in a medical emergency? I think if you're going to weigh that out as anybody, regardless what side of the narrative you decided to play along with, you're going to say to yourself, in your time of need, you're going to take the doctor over what the doctor took. I guess, if that makes sense to you. So I think that there's a lot of people who realize now that there's health care professional shortage here, and the system is not running efficiently. We have to look at that from a management perspective, how this was managed, and then are you willing to just comply to the next crisis, or are you gonna? Climate's the big thing that they're playing now, and if we stand up to this hoax, which it is a hoax, because we have 4 seasons and the climate continues to change and it'll never stop. So taxing people for it or trying to control people because the climate changes is a control mechanism. It's a vehicle to steer clear from and ensure that your voice is heard in these regards. So yeah, there's a lot to be learned from making mistakes. And, as far as bringing people together, you kind of have to look at it like what brings people together. And it can't just be town halls that people are being paid for to do. Events where, you've got polished speakers all of the time. We need to build leadership through community. And basically, if you see somebody that you think has a good message, to bring them along, give them a chance and see what they're capable of,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We've noticed on our show that the conservative-minded individual is often not very good at collectivizing. And what you've done in your efforts, James and Bella, individually and then together, is give other individuals who have particular ideas, convoys, right, overhead passes, bus protests, etc., local protests going up to larger, corporate and public buildings and stuff like that. And you've been able to give each of those individuals or those smaller groups an opportunity to participate in a collaborative effort and gain an amplified effect, right? And what you've done with Stand United is unique, certainly unique in British Columbia during COVID, because as we've participated in some attempts to make a larger collectivization, just how difficult that is to do among conservative-minded individuals. So what you've accomplished is really quite significant. I was wondering if you would expand on that idea of those smaller groups that may think that they're alone, but and how they are not, and then how Stand United helps to give those a voice as well and to participate in a larger event. What would that look like?
Well, we're not the fringe. First of all, don't think of yourself as small. Think of yourself as a movement, and all movements grow. So think of this as a populist environment of people who appreciate their ability to be individuals. And I think that's what you're getting at with the conservative-minded type of individuals, is that we're very independent people. We like our privacy, and we like to, kind of write our own stories and not be told how to live our lives. Myself, just from a standpoint, I look at my grandmother grew up without her dad because he lost his life in World War II fighting for our freedoms. And now I honor that and I respect that. And I would do it myself. And I think you have to put it at a perspective that am I any better than my great-grandfather as an individual? I don't think so. Am I any better than anybody else? I don't think so. I think everybody has something to contribute and we complement each other. So having convoys come to our events only made it amplified our message, getting it across, because more people supported it. And then you're not really a fringe, but they have their way of expressing it and you have your way. And then having other people come along with you that are professionals in the topics that you're challenging those narratives on gives you credibility, because it's not necessarily James Davison that's trying to solve the problems. I'm just trying to coordinate how we can solve the problems. And when people look at it from that perspective, it's everybody that you pick up the rope and you pull together and you have a greater outcome, you know.
Kind of go back to something that you said, Tim, this collectivism, and working together with people. And I love collaborative working. And that's working with all the other groups they're everywhere. And one of the amazing things, I had the privilege of traveling BC into Saskatchewan and Alberta, and speaking in different rallies. But once you start meeting your tribe on social media, you connect with these people. And a lot of the time in my early days of organizing these events, people were saying, Marcella, what can we do? How can we get this rolling? Can you come and help us? And I would. And I would bring a team. We always traveled with No New Normal, the Liberty Clubs, and Hags Over Masks. And we did these rallies. We helped people get involved. We gave them tools that they could use to put in place. How can we get more people on board? And one of the things that we always did was never bring people to an event without giving them something to do when they leave. Because you can bring everybody there and preach to the choir, but if you're not giving the people something to do, you're not being effective.
Like a notice of liability or
Right.
things like that, you know.
So some of the things that we did with Stand United is reaching across this country, and people would say, you need to connect with so-and-so. These are our connections. You need to connect with so-and-so. They've got rallies going, join with them and get them on board. And we did. And we just connected right across this country. So we've got people in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Quebec, right up into the Yukon. And, we would have these Zoom meetings. Okay, this is what we have on board. What else can we do with this? And it was that collective mind, because he doesn't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but people have these ideas and solutions. If we can put our heads together and work together to make this happen, we're not alone. We have that support and we're making that connection. And that was one of the biggest things was, as James was saying earlier, networking, connect with people, get people on board, because each one of us connects with different people in a different way. And that brings that personality or that type of person on board. James connects with people in a different way than I do. He brings that to the table, but together we can work this out and push for that change that we're seeking.
And I just want to say something, is it really comes down to the initiative, that people have to believe in it. So that is where, I want to say to Marcella that, yes, we kind of got together little tribes, but I honestly believe that's the downfall of the conservative populace, because we have to be a community. We have to understand that nobody can solve the issues that we have ourselves, and stop looking at it like this is our camp over here, but we can be just as effective if they have their camp over there, because what we really need is a community base that is going to work together. And you have to have initiatives that people believe in. Like the Media is the Virus was pretty easy to get people on board, because the people who understood that it was just a circular narrative being pushed and there was no other side of the discussion being had. And if you did have the courage to, upset the apple cart, you were canceled. So it's easy to get people who are being pushed into a corner to come out fighting if they're in the right place. And then, we transferred from the Media is the Virus. We went to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. Now this is nationwide as well, because we had already made these wonderful connections with other people who were standing up to the narratives. And the College of Physicians and Surgeons, we did that after the mandates were dropped, but you still had to comply if you went into a medical setting. Okay, so for me, that was medical tyranny. And that's what we did. We stand united up to medical tyranny. And it was a very effective way to bring people to the forefront of Stand United, that really had a great message to the, the establishment and the administrations that were in charge, is that they have to listen to the professional side of this.
So did you have anything you wanted to add, Andre? And probably make mention about telling everybody out there to like and share and subscribe and all that other stuff.
Well, I will let
Peyman's
Peyman ask
reminding me
a
to do.
question if he wants. because I have many questions, but I will be polite and diplomatic.
No question. I wanted to say I'm really excited. You mentioned Susan Stanfield. I interviewed her. She's a wealth of information. So I'm glad you mentioned her. Just some housekeeping. Thank you to Clown World for sharing the space, the room, and thank you JT for sharing it. If everybody else could share it, we really want to get our guest message out there. Get our guest message out there today. We are pretty much suppressed and siloed on social media. So sharing the room is the best way to do it. Thank you.
André?
Well, James, you mentioned something very important. The speech of Trudeau, for example, the French minority, and they always hammered this propaganda on individual. I think Marcella mentioned the consequences of the mandate, and on suicidal statistics, or anxiety, bankruptcy. We're not isolated. That's what they want. That's the first thing. The second thing that I found very interesting, what you mentioned about this "No New Normal" slogan, which is quite interesting because it was an expression that they were using all the time. I remember Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand. It's the new normal. It's the new normal. So you hammer a slogan, and one day it becomes true. How do you perceive the media today? And my question is double. The first one is, how do you perceive mainstream media today, and how can you explain that you had so many activist movement, protest movement, 2020, 21, 22, and there's a lot of alternative media, and it seems very difficult to federate them. Is it possible to federate them? Because Tim mentioned, conservative minds. They're not necessarily individual, but they want to be sovereign. How can we federate those movements, including Stand United? Because there's a lot of them.
Well, I'll be quick with the mainstream media. It's a vehicle for the globalists to push their agenda. And if you're still listening to the mainstream media, I hope it's just to see what they're pushing next. Credibility meter, for me, it's plummeted to ground zero. There's no credibility in the mainstream media. So I recommend that people watch it for the purpose of knowing kind of where they're going next with the agenda. It's an educational source. And then, you're going to hear more truth on social media, media hosts like yourself. It's time consuming. I think the biggest thing about getting messages out through independent media is that people don't have the time to sit there. They have jobs, they have families, they have crises that are happening for real in real time in their own lives. It's, so people get sound bites. So it's very important to have the right message, be consistent. Is that I don't expect you to trust me based off of what I said. I can only say that from what I've seen, there has to be a better way than what, of doing things and pushing us in the right direction, and making sure that everybody has the ability to prosper and get, good education and healthcare and real justice. These things are truly lacking, and equality. There's so many things that are going against the current administration. To think for 1 second that they've even been reelected there, it's unbelievable. So there's a lot to that question. It could be undressed for a very long time, which I know you've all really dived deep into. That is its control. So how do we take the control back? Well, it's going to be by being consistent in your messaging and give people hope, because I think so many people have already flatlined. They're burnt out, and that's not because they didn't try, just they ran out of resources, or they didn't get the support they needed from people, or got backstabbed. And just try to remember these three things, be professional, be logical, and move in a forward direction. And don't let the narrative prevent you from being the best version of yourself every single day. There's a couple things you're going to take with you when you leave this world is your integrity and your soul. So don't let them be corrupt, and don't sell out, you know. I don't know if that answered your other question.
Yes, it does. And I just have a remark or maybe a follow-up question for Bella. Bella, you mentioned something very important. You were using like a task force to go. Somebody calls you, you say, can you come and help me? You go with a team. And you said, when we leave, we give them tasks, things to do. That could be, in your opinion, could that be part of a strategy to help people? If you say you invite somebody, you give them a task. Because if you go away after, doing what you have to do, a conference, a meeting, whatever, they can just stop. We have to inspire them. I think we had a guest many weeks ago. He was talking about inspiring people. Do you think it can be part of a strategy of communication?
Oh, I 100% agree. I just was at an event, I think it was about a week ago, and it's some local business area people, and they were invited to the table to discuss the things that are happening in our province. And I was one of the speakers and one of the organizers of that. And just sharing information. It is amazing how much people know and how much they don't know, but they know things are wrong and there's something funky going on. And so all these people were brought to the table, and I was the last one to speak. And I'm a marketing major and been in sales, and always believe in motivation, positive motivation, and that nobody can be left out of the equation. They can all be involved. And so that was like my finishing remarks were, here's how you can get involved. These are some of the things that you can do. And the feedback I got after from my team was that, Marcella, I can't tell you how many emails and how many people came up afterwards and said, I want to get involved. When you give people information and you provide them with the tool,
resources,
it's power in their hands. And to get on board and join with people in your local area, bring more people with you, because we can get more done. Because when it's just two of us organizing,
can I add to
it's
this?
hard.
Can I add to this one too here, Andre? Because it is important. And just like recently here, we Pierre Barnes and myself did an initiative, and we had some great speakers, Marcella being one of them. And it was at our school board here in Abbotsford. And now I went into the school board on October 21st and listened to the entire meeting, 3 hours. It's a long time to get like 20-second question, but it was worth it. So because one of the topics that day on the agenda was about SOGI 123 ideology, I had the opportunity to actually ask a question in regards to that subject. So that was great. I already knew what I was going to ask before I went up there. And I asked the chair, Lady Wilson, I said, how many genders do you recognize? And for the record, what are they? And I honestly didn't expect there to be transparency. And I didn't think that there was a good answer. There's not a good answer. But she was happy to say that there are many genders, and I recognize them as they are presented. So that was great, because that's exposing the fact that they're promoting this mental illness in elementary and middle school and for that age. So what the trustee was trying to achieve in that discussion was to have the schools have to send out a newsletter to parents if their children are in elementary and middle school, if that type of education is going to be happening a week in advance, just so parents know how to navigate this with their children as well, or if they want them exposed to it, And of course, the motion was voted down. And what we're trying to accomplish is, we have a website in place. There's an email that you can copy, you can customize it, and you can send it to the school board, is to get Trustee White's motion back on the table. And now, do I have to do this? No, I have my own company. Do I feel compelled to do this? Yes, I have grandkids, and they're in this with us, and all of our kids are growing up in this situation. So it's not a lot of work for someone to go to the website. There's a call to action, click it. You can easily copy that email that's already drafted, customize it a little bit if you like, or just use it the way that it is, sign it and send it into the school board. Let's make an impact here. So that's how you involve other people in the initiative. It's not just showing up, and it's not just, raw, right? It's great to do that and build a community and find other people who are brave enough to take a position of speaking or planning or strategizing organically like that. But it is great to have the initiative still going on behind the scenes from people who aren't even going to show up at the event, but they believe in what you're doing.
Just want to just dovetail that a little bit. Earlier today, I was just thinking some of the things that we were going to talk about today. And James mentioned something about being a grandfather, having children. I'm a grandma. I have children. I have grandchildren. A wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And we today are founding society and the things that are happening. And when we have lost all morality and common sense, I'm thinking future generations, what are they walking into? How can we be that difference today so they actually have something to look forward to and walk into? And that starts with us. We can't allow crazy to continue on to insanity. And I mean, we're probably already there. It just depends on what area you're looking into. But we have a future legacy that's going to come in after us. What are we leaving them? And how willing are we to give them something better? We have to rise to that occasion.
Yes, you're right. You're right, Bella. And James, what you were mentioning, you were involved at the beginning with the mandate or the PSYOP, and then you expand your I would say your vision towards SOGI and many things that we're seeing now. Do you see? And maybe I don't know about British Columbia, in Quebec, there was a big awakening during the COVID mandate, and especially with the Freedom Convoy, and then it faded away, like nothing happened. And it is sometimes frustrating for people who try to help people open their eyes. Do you see a certain fatigue in the general public toward what is happening, or do you still have this momentum?
All right, so that's a loaded question. I want to address it.
They're all loaded. I'm sorry.
It's going to take a minute because I want to come at this from a logical standpoint. The initiative to go to Ottawa was terrific because the truckers really were our beacon of hope at that point in time. The overpass rallies were massive, for the truckers going past. We were doing the medias of the virus at the point in time. I think February 5th was just an intense rally we had with a huge convoy, and these rigs were just dressed up in all patriotic flags and colors. It was beautiful, and we had drummers, and it was massive, and excellent speakers arriving on the scene. But you got to understand, okay, I'm not going to say that I'm better than anybody else, and don't take it that way. But moving forward, when you have such a great initiative, you have to manage it properly as well, because we lost so much momentum when people's bank accounts were being frozen. And, you saw the footage of horses trampling crippled ladies and different things like that in Ottawa. And everybody, it was something that a lot of people who, not necessarily were on the fence, but afraid. Let's just say they were afraid to stand up. Those people that all did that trip to Ottawa gave those people the courage to get up and stand up with them. And when you see the people that gave you enough courage to finally stand there, get trampled and their bank accounts frozen, then you crawl back into your little cocoon where it's safe because you're afraid. So managing initiatives is just as important as having an initiative, to do it lawfully, respectfully, and understand that there's a time to hold your ground and there's a time to pivot and come back with another part of the strategy. That's how it is for me. I admire everybody for everything they've done. Myself, I'm very calculated in how I move forward. And it's just, if you manage a resource, you have a much better chance of long-term success. Instant gratification always has long-term consequences. And I think it's the same thing with social media, or pitting people against other people, or pointing your finger and blaming. It doesn't solve a thing. But what happens from learning from your mistakes is hopefully learning from your mistakes. So that way, when you do amass that kind of support, you can maintain it through logic, because dictators don't step down, my friend. They never have, they never will. So you pivot, you say, okay, I've got millions of dollars. Now I'm going to put these resources into polls across Canada to see who thinks the mandates are fair and just and warranted, and have the right questions with the right polls. And then you come back to Ottawa with a proposal. I think, again, I'm not trying to put my neck on the chopping block and have people hate me for my thoughts. I'm just saying that if you didn't learn about managing resources from that, then we didn't learn anything, So,
well, if they want to hate you without any purpose, they will do it. So might as well, like you said, put your heads on the chopping block and do what we have to do, our duty. So,
we'll just understand that all of these things that we're fighting for are on legislation and policy. So in order to change what's happening to us in our institutions, where we know that our institutions are morally bankrupt, and why they're bankrupt, because it's intentional. Nobody could do this bad of a job of organizing provinces and organizing cities and the rest of it unless it was intentional. You have all of these resources and you just create more debt, keep raising taxes. And as Klaus Schwab said, we're preparing for an angrier society. Well, you're getting on our nerves, guy, But at the end of the day, you have to look at that in the big picture, is that you have to establish a community that will back a new grassroots government. Because if you're going to install career politicians in these parties, regardless how fresh and brand new they are, they're going to be corrupt by the same people who were corrupt in the party before them. So look at the big picture and realize that it's going to take a community, and you're going to have to put people in the positions of making decisions for the rest of the province. You're talking about very few people are doing that, and be willing to stand up to the narratives so that you can actually change things, but you have to have the votes. So if I could give people advice, is don't squander your vote. It's the most important thing you have. We have to make it too big to rig, because we know that there's a lot of unfair play out there. But get behind the people who have got a track record that you can actually vet yourself, and you can say, listen, you know what? I will talk highly about this person based off of the actions and the resume. And those are the people that should be the ones in the arena fighting for you, because they've been fighting for you throughout all of this time we've been going through this. And some people have been awake a lot longer than I have. I had to be disrupted before I snapped out of the matrix,
So just want to step in at the moment and remind people to like and share and subscribe and do all the reposting and help us to get a greater audience. And Peyman has an injection.
We mentioned this at the beginning, but if you guys have just joined us, if you have a question that you want to put to the guests, please put it in the comments and we'll get to it in about 15 or 20 minutes. Any question you have, as long as it's professional and appropriate, we'll get to it. Thank you.
I was reminded when you mentioned the different types of events, the different types of activities and things that people can participate in. Can you share some of those, the overpass events and the rallies outside the local MLA's office, et cetera? And you had a very large, very well represented rally in Vancouver, and I believe that was CT Global. Is that outside the Global TV offices, I believe? Can you share some of those experiences and how you managed to get the different groups to come together and collaborate on such a thing? Because this is what I think is likely to be the model moving forward. Right? Because so how do you perceive that? How did you make it happen? Right? And how do you perceive that moving forward?
The ability to respect what other people bring to the team, even if you are not necessarily resonating yourself with what they're bringing to the team. It's a community, and everybody has their own set of thoughts and what they want to back up. So it was excellent for us. I mean, I was involved with everybody from the beginning because I stepped up in the beginning. I went on my very first protest, and my dad said, "Oh, you're going to go there with those conspiracy theorist idiots and blah, blah, blah." So as you were saying, Andre, that yes, this did affect relationships. My father wasn't impressed with my stance, and I've never been patted on the back for it. And it's a good thing that that's not what I'm in this for. I didn't really need a dad to tell me this was right or wrong, because I already have that notion myself. But the main thing is to respect and admire people for what they bring to the team, and to recognize that there are people out there that are doing some work that maybe didn't get the platform. And we didn't really, the platform wasn't given to us by any stretch of the imagination. So we worked with, I helped Ryan Cabalba bring his message to Laura Lynn Taylor Tyler Thompson, and Dan Dix, and people like that. I brought him to that because that's how I actually met Marcella, was at a protest. Me and Harm Baum went to the Guildford rally for a celebration of freedoms and rights. And I met a whole different crew of people that, they were doing it their way on the side of the street at Guildford Mall, which is a very busy place in BC. And a lot of people saw the signs and honked, and a lot of people gave the finger and were wearing their masks 3 at a time, and, saying that we were grandma killers and this and that. So you build a community that way, and you recognize the great things that people are doing and the courage that they have to do it, first off. So I built relationships with, No New Normal. I built relationships with End the Lockdowns. I built relationships with a celebration of freedoms and rights. And we ended up doing that big rally, the first real big rally at the art gallery, based on the fact that, I made that connection, and I'm proud of that. I'm not saying that I did it myself. Heck no. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying that, I coordinated that. And I always felt as though that was kind of my strength, is to see the good in other people, what they were doing, and try to put more people together, because I do believe that we're stronger together, and our message will go a lot farther if, again, we're consistent in our messaging. So, yeah, just, be that person to give the other person a hand up. There's a lot of people who have great ambition that probably aren't going to achieve, what they have in their head for themselves. But it doesn't mean to say that they're not a big part of the solution, or they might not have a great idea. So if they have the courage, that's the first step, to recognize that. Keep having the conversations with people, even though a lot of people don't want to take the time. Are we burnt out? Heck no. I'm only getting started. I believe that everything, I learned along the ways is just to keep an open mind, that I've made mistakes that I would take back, and I apologize for them openly, because I'm not perfect. But at the same time, I did a lot of things that I think needed to be done and brought a lot of people together. I'm proud of that. We did. And I can't even just say we brought a lot of different groups together, and not just here in BC, but all across Canada. We've had as many, this is something I'm really proud of, we're very proud of, is that we had 29 different places across Canada do our citizens inquiry event at the RCMP. And if they didn't have an RCMP outlet, then they went to a police station to do that. And it was on informed consent. So we didn't just show up. We planned it. Strategy again, we planned this out to make sure that we have an informed consent documentation package that's very complete. And it was made by professionals, doctors, a lawyer put it together, virologists. These people are very educated, and they put this together because it was a notice of malfeasance, notice of liability, and a notice of cease and desist order. And it's like, how many pages?
50.
So we mailed these out to the chiefs of police, as well as we made sure that
MPs,
that
MLAs.
media representation for those departments all knew we were going to be there well in advance. And what we were trying to achieve was to have the RCMP come out and just on our inquiry tell us exactly what the legal definition of informed consent is and how it's supposed to protect us. So we weren't asking them to join us. We were just asking them to tell us what the real law is here. So, you kind of have to play hardball with people like that. So we're really proud of those things, bringing so many people together. And did we take credit for some of this? Yes, but I mean, other people put their friends and contacts in contact with us. It was a community of the nation that worked together. And I think if you approach things professionally and you have an objective and people believe in what you're trying to achieve, people will get behind you, or not even behind you, but they'll stand united with you. So
Next to you, yes.
yeah.
Well, you mentioned something, if I may ask, you mentioned something. I think we were caught off guard in 2019, 2020. Nobody was expecting something like this. It's like you're attacked. Somebody declares you war, and then you lose a lot of troops, people die, and then you fall back, you reorganize, and you counterattack, if I can use the expression. I like what you're saying, because I think sometimes we forget everything that happened in the last 5 or 6 years, because the agenda is always moving. When you mentioned SOGI, climate change oaks, that I use the expression, and you mentioned something very important: fall back and having a strategy. Those small action that you were doing were planned. And you said there's no RCMP office. You go to a police station, and a lot of people don't know what was going on behind the scene. People like you and Bella were organizing things, and maybe this is what we have to promote also: the fact that you have an organization, and it's not just a front. Sometimes I criticize people, or not necessarily people, but organization or association, because they have a nice website, but behind that, there's no strategy. There's no, it's a protest movement, or, they want to federate people. So that's one thing that I'm noticing with your experience. What would be the next step now? We're in 2000, practically 26. How you will proceed to keep the momentum and maybe federate more people, more group, or more association? Because what I see, there's a lot of people who are creating association, but they work in silo, and it's normal at the beginning, but the grassroots has to collectivize, like Bella mentioned. Is there a strategy we can put up front to help people engage, like you mentioned?
Do you want me to
Go for it.
Or do you want?
No, go for it.
I honestly think that people just we all need to collectively look at what other people have to offer and be open to it. And, like, you look at Jordan Cayley out here, he's independent MLA, and his voice is truly for the people of his riding. And I think if you want to be successful and change what we're going through right now, work together. I always invited the people even that didn't want to stand united with us. They were all welcome. And if you had a good message, you know, like even people that I didn't really want on my platform, I did give them the chance, because we are all in this together. So find out before you pass judgment on people, what they have to offer and bring to the team. That's my advice, is really give people a chance to work together. I think putting it into terms is that you can't win a big battle in little camps. So if I could, I would help people navigate to get together. And the really important thing is that people don't talk over each other, that they take the time to listen. And if you're listening to people, you're going to find out that there's a lot of people out there that have some great ideas. You can't accomplish too many different things at once. And, you know, look for some lower hanging fruit, because it's the impacts, it's the little battles that you need to take on to win, ultimately, you know, the war. And we, as André said, we're in a war right now. And it is, for a lot of people, so important not to get sidetracked from the fact that, you know, you had a little bit of success and then you pull back and you realize that, okay, well, perhaps you might live in an area of BC now that you might not even be able to renew your mortgage. Well, all of a sudden you're right back awake. And that's based off the fact that lending institutions aren't even going to renew your mortgage because they don't want to take a risk with their money that nobody's going to pay it back. So what does it take to jolt people? Does it take a total crisis to jolt people? Like when it's your kid, I've said that the agenda is coming for all of us. It's not coming, and it will touch your family, whether it's the the safe supply. Look how many people's lives are being destroyed by drugs, and we don't have any way to get them the help that they need. So we just give them more drugs. Like, this doesn't make any sense. So in order to, you got to find something that hits a nerve with people to bring them together. And that's, what is it? Soji 1, 2, 3. That hits a nerve with people. Addiction and the fact that there's not the proper counseling and places for people to recover. That hits a nerve with people, especially now that it's going to be closer to their communities. Mm-hmm. What else? Like, healthcare. Think about the things that are really affecting us, because when people say to me, well, you know, you really were disruptive, James. And then it happens. Like, I get all kinds of social media slam. Yeah, it's fine. I just come back with logic and I say, like, disruptive, how? You know, like firing all of as many medical professionals as they possibly could during a medical crisis, or not being able to visit your loved ones in a care home facility, or like that kind of disruptive. And it's within my Bill of Rights to protest when I don't think our government is treating the people fairly, right? So long story short, it's find something people will get behind, and then don't look at everybody like, okay, we're all leaders. I'm not the leader. I'm just the guy that was the front man for Stand United. And if I have my way, I will be an elected official in our province. That's my goal, because I believe that deep down inside, all of the institutions, it's just that they have been morally corrupt and we need to clean house. And when we clean house, things are going to go back to normal. And, you know, like, let's just elect a government that's grassroots, that isn't going to buy into the agenda. And it's easier said than done. Believe me, I ran independently. I did really well as an independent, but I'm not even close to well enough to win a seat. So think big, you know, like, or go home. But at the same time, the little battles all matter. And then it's, again, you're going to raise an army when people believe in the initiative. And that's what we need.
You had a question, Peyman?
Yeah. If somebody had asked me yesterday, like, what do you think of Stand United? I would have been like, what is Stand United? I've never heard of them. And I went on your website today and I was like, holy crap. I've been to a whole bunch of these protests that you guys organize. Two of them I remember, the one in front of the CBC or CTV and the one with the Chris Sky one. I'm guessing there was another couple, but I have to go back and look at the pictures. My question is, like, as you were, as COVID's evolving and you're doing these events, did you find that from 2019, 2020 to now, the level of support has just like successfully iteratively increased? Did you find that it peaked at some point and people maybe got scared and they dropped out? Or did people get, for me, for example, I got a little bit more involved. I went to a whole bunch of protests. Then I said, no, I have to run for federal office. I have to do something. What was your experience with Stand United?
Well, it's a matter of, okay, I think people really got sidetracked by the carbon tax. I knew that's okay. It's in your face, and it was something, again, it's easier to do a convoy. I'm not saying it's not significant, but as a purposeful thing, what is the end game? And for me, with Stand United, there had to be the documentation, like our informed consent documentation package, which is massive. It's factual. It's QR coded to all of the trusted government websites with all of the research done, and it can never be called misinformation. It's there and it's substantial. So that package went to every single MP in Canada. It went to every single MLA, I believe, in all of Canada. I know in all of British Columbia, but this was happening. And I'm talking about registered mail, not just emailed. And a registered mail, it means you've got that. So when you know that the narrative you're pushing is false and it's causing harm, I want to get to accountability. So for me, running around in circles over a carbon tax that will only be changed through legislation, it's not worth my effort or time. And that's where it boils down to with me, is resource management. And I didn't feel as though the people are the greatest resource of the movement. And they were going in a direction that I was more concerned at that time. And I'll tell you, that was our last initiative, was the WHO Pandemic Preparedness Treaty. And we did it twice in a matter of, I think, a 2-month or a 3-month span. And, we wanted to do this nationwide. And people were going off on their convoys for the carbon tax and ignoring what we were doing. And I'm like, you guys, like, you recognize the dangers now. I don't know if you do, but now we're in this treaty. So if we do go into another state of emergency, it's not going to be our elected officials telling us how we have to behave, where we have to stay, who we can see, and what we can do. It's going to be the World Health Organization, this corrupt, non-governing organization that none of us elected. So that's what I'm about, guys. And if you want to do something that is purposeful and will make an impact, I'm in 100%. If you want to drive around and complain about things we can't change, I'm up.
Well, if you want to drive around and complain about things that you can work to make change on, I mean, there's pick your battle, because there's so many little things out there that we can all focus on. And as James said, you strain your resources. You've got 20 people over here, 30 over there, 100 over here, but nobody over on this very important issue.
Well, and the thing I just want to say to you, like, it's that the point of the carbon tax is, what did Carney do? He just put it onto the big corporations and they'll pass it on to us. It didn't go anywhere. And we should have been, with this WHO Pandemic Preparedness Treaty, I mean, we should have been in the streets, like, in the millions, man. And that's what, even like a person like myself who is logical enough to know where we need to be, when we need to be there, and why that reason is so crucial to the future. Because once we get put back into a situation, look what happened with the ostriches. Okay, when they decide they're doing something, it doesn't matter if there's a few people there, they're just going to knock you out of the way. And that's where it does come down to critical mass. And using that in the streets would have been a direct message to the establishment that Canadians are not for it. And I'll move forward and say the biggest threats now is they're using the vehicle of climate change. And that's going to get us into where we're headed with this digital ID. And these are the big things people have to stand up for now. If you really want things to get better for us now, you're going to have to take the pain as soon as they bring in this digital ID. But you know, there's going to be people who won't, like senior citizens that are depending on their pension, anybody who has a bureaucracy check, all of the police, anything that's government. So once they have it, you're either going to have it or you're going to be told you have to have it. And eventually it's going to be like, well, you know, you have unacceptable views and we're going to cut you out. Guys, we haven't got the rest of our lives to figure out a solution. We only have enough time to, honestly, you know, I think we're running out of time. So if that's not a carrot for you enough to stop what you're doing, if it's not contributing to the solution, and start contributing to the solution.
Do you have a follow-up question, Andre?
No, maybe Peyman wants to go to the question of the audience.
We can open it up for questions then.
Well, I would have a lot of question follow up. I would just mention one thing. We still have the carbon tax in Quebec. They did not remove it.
No.
They're just passing it down to us, Andre, through the corporations.
Yeah.
It's not gone. And this is my point, is like, if we're going to be successful, we have to pinpoint attainable fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be something that people will get behind and support.
So let's go to you, Peyman, to open up questions from the audience.
All right, I have 3 queued up. The first one's not strictly in the form of a question, so I'll massage it for you. JT says, greed is the root problem. Sacrifice the future, the youth, for immediate satisfaction today. COVID exposed this societal issue tenfold. Experimental drugs for children to apparently save grandma 5 more years. I guess the way I turn this into a question, I remember a time when there was the trope about the mom and the dad that would sacrifice their lives to save the children. And now it's, do you agree that we've moved into a different scenario where we're sacrificing the children to save, in this case, grandma?
100%. I think any true parent or grandparent would be the shield in front of their children or grandchildren. The only thing that flipped that narrative was what they were saying on the mainstream media. And if you say a lie enough, long enough, people start to believe it. So yeah. Don't believe what you hear on the mainstream media. The media is the virus. Like, sorry, I'm not trying to downplay it. Like, it's a big deal, but it's a controlled narrative when you can't challenge it. And that's what you have to, first of all, recognize. Everybody must recognize when you can't challenge a narrative, you're put into a category in a camp. You're an anti this, you're an anti that, you're a fringe minority, you're a racist, you're a bigot. There's a lot of ways that the establishment can use the mainstream media to spin their narrative and cancel people. And so many people are afraid to even be called a name. They just cower down, right?
So at the top of the show, we made notes about the organization Stand United and you two and your part in it and how it assists others with collaboration to speak against the tyranny. There are comments on the side by Grandadio, for example, who may not have been here for that, to hear that. Can you summarize what Stand United is again, what your parts in it, and how Stand United has assisted Canadians to fight against tyranny?
I found from working with the other groups that we weren't taking on the establishments. So Stand United was structured to, first off, stand united. It's not just a name. brand. It's what we need to do. So when you've got groups over here doing their little thing, as Marcella was saying, and you've got groups over here doing their little thing, it doesn't have the same impact as if you stand united. You need more people to stand together and let everybody have their message at that Stand United event. Geez, we really have to just realize that what Stand United stands for and what we worked for and how we got there is based on the fact that we saw some people who weren't willing to work with other people. And that, in my opinion, needed to be rectified. So Stand United was the name that we chose. The initiatives, realistically, most of them, I'm just really clever at seeing where we need to be. And it's like guerrilla warfare. Okay. We're in a war. How do you fight back the establishment? Well, you don't do it on marches. I mean, it's helpful and people see you. But if you're taking that march to the place that's disrupting you, like the mainstream media, you're holding them accountable because you're disrupting them now. And that was the purpose of having the College of Physicians and Surgeons. And I remember the first time we did the College of Physicians and Surgeons rally in Vancouver, you look up at the building and you can just see them Garfielded, right to the window watching us. And they recognized that, people were paying attention to what they're doing. Backing those initiatives up with the informed consent documentation package and putting the pressure back on them. I mean, if we get to accountability, all of these people who received that didn't do any research on it, just turfed it in the garbage. I don't know if that means they're accountable, but I believe it does. And we should be looking for accountability. So what does Stand United really represent? It's to get to accountability, and it's to work with people who believe in the initiative, and it's a vehicle for people to come together regardless of what your group name is.
You mentioned something also very important. I think you're a hub in the sense that you federate many movements and try to, like you said, stand united with certain values and tradition, accountability, honesty. That's very important.
Yeah, integrity to everybody, right? We are all trying. If you're on this side of the fence, then we've all been trying to achieve the same thing, which is just to get back to normal, because that's what you said, Andre, earlier on, is that this is the new normal. Well, it's not the normal that we're going to comply to, because you can't comply your way out of tyranny, and it's tyrannical, the behavior and the overreach into our lives that the government, took the direction that they did. So it was our responsibility and our duty to protect our own rights and well-being and future. Yeah.
Go ahead, Peyman.
Marcella, did you want to add anything to this comment?
I was actually just trying to reread the one that you have on the screen there, sacrificing the youth for immediate satisfaction today. And my brain was just going somewhere else with that, because when I look at what is happening to our young people and our youth, and, we look at the SOGI, what's happening with them, young children are impressionable, and they're getting them when they're young and indoctrinating them in publicly funded schools. And, as much as they don't want certain things being taught to their children, but they're darn going to force you to take what they want your kids to know and take. And then we look at our whole vaccination schedule. Sorry if that gets you on the banned list. Schedule for children. We're destroying innocent children.
Well, they're
for what?
They're vulnerable, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? We're looking at poor grandma and grandpa in their care homes as well. And sacrificing your children for mom and dad. I think that's a really difficult question to answer, but I felt at the beginning that we're sacrificing grandma and grandpa, because as soon as they're sick, they're in the hospital, they're on the ventilator. What are they giving them? Stuff that's not going to make them better. And it was just like, take them out. Let's attack the young people, because now we've got the biggest incidence of myocarditis, pericarditis, blood clotting, and everything else happening in our young people we never saw before by this experimental vaccination, what they put experimental drugs for children. And not only just the COVID-19 vaccinations, but
saying that word.
we're also talking about Soji and the drugs that they're putting these young children on. Like, literally, I saw a video this morning where a mom and dad were out with their 1.5-year-old, and the interviewer asked them, at what age did so-and-so decide they were trans? And the mother, I just, who are you, Fruit Loops? Because a baby does not determine their gender. They're just goo-goo gaga-ing, okay? They don't know that yet. They're not at an age of accountability to understand what is happening in their body. They're newborn. They're baby. But
the passion
logic,
of a grandmother.
The logic that this mother is saying that, oh, well, he, which is a he because became a she, knew at birth and let us know, a 1.5-year-old. I just shake my head at the logic and the reasoning of society. It absolutely baffles me.
That's why I really hope that the language moving forward for people is, let's stop talking so much about a freedom movement. Let's start talking about an accountability movement, and let's be professional, logical, and move forward, because we're right and we have that on our side. They have no argument, which is why they cancel you. So they put you in a situation, you're in a war with them, and they have all of the toys. So just don't change your messaging and be real with people when they ask you, why do you have a problem with it? Well, because I think, people don't really have a fully developed mind and see where they're going to end up until they're 25. Yeah. Starting them on hormone blockers at 14, 15, and 16 years old, based off of what a psychologist says, if they're mature enough to take it. And that goes without any parental consent. It's, the hijacking of children's minds at such a young age to believe that they shouldn't, first of all, they shouldn't be being taught about something that they're not involved in themselves. I mean, what happens behind closed doors is your business. And when you're ready to do that, you'll do it. And I didn't need anyone to tell me about it, because you're human and it's nature. So leave people, and especially kids, alone.
Well, you mentioned 25 years old. You're very conservative, James. Some people at 60, 65, 70, their brain is still not formed. And we saw this in Quebec. 6,700 elderly people were left without any treatment, and they died in 3 months. In Quebec. I will never go back to this type of tyranny. And I'm a grandfather, so I do understand.
And that's the message. That's the message, Andre. Just be strong in your conviction, and stand on the right side of history. It's easy to say, and not everybody understands what that means. But people, sacrificed life and limb for this country so that we can live a prosperous life, and we can practice our faith. Our Canadian values need to be protected, and you can't really take the masculinity out of a man and expect him to grow up right. And I don't like how, I'm not a womanizer by any stretch of the imagination, but I believe a strong family starts with a woman who does back her man and understands that the leadership in the house, it's not just when someone's breaking through your door. Of course you're going to be the first one out of bed to take on the perpetrator, but in life, lead by example. And if you defer your responsibility to someone else all the time, you're never going to become accountable, and I think they want that. So yeah.
Go ahead, Peyman.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Thank you for the responses, by the way. This one is from AHS Refugee. What is the reason you believe voting will change anything? No matter the seat, it's a circus. Has anyone not noticed this for decades? The question I have is, what's your message to people who have lost faith in our electoral system?
My message is we need you to support us. I'm not kidding around. I'm going to be running in the provincial election. If you can help me in any way, you know what I stand for. And this is why you need to do your due diligence to support the people in your ridings that you believe in. And if there isn't somebody you believe in, find someone you can believe in, because it really boils down to, if we don't take that responsibility from the people who are creating all of these crises for us, then they're going to continue to get away with it. And realistically, there's no easy way out. And there's no silver bullet other than the fact that we are going to have to address this in our legislatures. And the federal government vote anyways, because we need change. You know, even if you vote for a party, just vote. Myself, I'm not promoting any federal party, but I voted Conservative, and it was a controversial vote in my riding. But I did it because I wanted to get away from the hell we're going through with the Liberal Party. And how else are we going to know that it is, you know, the left and the right wing of the same bird if we don't give the opposition a chance to be different? So it really does come down to that. But this is such a big machine federally that it's very hard to change dynamics in the federal government. The only way you can really change the dynamics, in my personal opinion, and I'm good at solving problems, is with strong provincial governance. To stand up and say, okay, I've got Scott Moe, Danielle Smith. Are they perfect? No, they're not, but at least they're standing up and challenging the narratives. We need to get to the point where we're unlocking our resources and moving forward so people can make a paycheck, and we can, you know, we have so much bureaucracy here, and that doesn't go around enough. You're spending taxpayer dollars on paychecks that's supposed to keep the taxpayers going. You need industry. So if we don't change our personal situation by changing the legislation itself, SOGI could be stopped with the legislation. We can have a structured curriculum. We can go back to dressing professional if you're a professional teacher. We can have a healthcare system that doesn't have ridiculous demands and, you know, threats based on the fact if you're a medical professional here in BC, you know, if you don't follow the political landscape, you'll be subjected to a $200,000 fine, 6 months in jail, to lose your license. This is all through the HPOA. Now, you know, what's happening right now with our legal process, our Law Society and Trial Lawyers Association has our provincial government in the Supreme Court in BC because they're trying to use that same platform that they hijacked our healthcare sector and College of Physicians and Surgeons from those professionals to implement that same vehicle to hijack your legal process. So when you know that you've got no right, no legal right, you've got no right to your bodily autonomy, you have no parental rights, and you don't have any property rights anymore, you can't say it's a conspiracy that this has been a Marxist tactic using these vehicles to drive us over the cliff to communism. And once you wrap your head around that, you realize whether you like it or not, that is the way forward, only peaceful way.
So then if I might interject, and I'm not trying to reframe it because I'm involved with the People's Party of Canada since 2019. And in our research and looking at the different types of voters, different types of people, we find that there's about 1/3 of all registered voters choose not to vote, regardless of their reason. That's a very large percentage of the population who say, I'm not participating in the process. And that's their right to do so. But that's a very large group that, were they to choose to become involved and to educate themselves and use that vote wisely, even if only for their own personal choices, if they were to become involved, we could realistically see positive change at the provincial and federal legislative levels.
You know, Tim, I agree with you 100%. And I actually supported Maxime Bernier a lot. We had him and Bill Vanderzam, who was our, he was our premier at a time, at one event in front of the College of Physicians and Surgeons at the same time. And what a thrill it was to have those two men. And I've sat down with Maxime Bernier. I've asked Maxime Bernier a question. Marcella was a candidate. She ran against Jagmeet in the snap election.
Yeah.
So it's not that we don't admire the PPC's platform. It's awesome. And so is Max. Some people will say, James, you're wrong. Again, I can't please everybody. All I know is that we do have to have a vehicle of change at this point in time to change our trajectory on our economic situation, because that's what's holding back everything right now. This climate is in the way. The special interest groups are in the way. The lobbyists are in the way. We can't function a proper government with all of these roadblocks and actually see us, because we're not middle-class citizens anymore. We're quickly becoming peasants with no rights. And if that isn't enough reason for you to say, I'm going to take a chance on at least the candidate that I believe in the most, or the party, for example, leadership that has a better platform to vote, then you can't help us right now. And unless you're willing to do something, I know there's a lot of people who are angry and they want a solution and instant gratification. But to fix a situation like this, we have to have a community that works together. There's a camp here that says, I'm not voting because I don't believe in you. There's 2/3 of a camp over here that says, I'm not voting because I don't believe in you. Put people forward that you believe in. Start a new provincial party in your province if you don't believe in what you have, and work towards it. If nothing else, you're going to gain education, experience, and you are going to help build a community.
André, Peyman, did you have anything else you wanted to add as we come up to the 90-minute mark?
Well, first of all, thanks for coming on the show, and also for promoting those ideas. Because like I was mentioning earlier, many actions are not visible. The structure, the dedication of people who work backstage, I think it is as important as people who are upfront. I hope that this movement can evolve into something that will emulate other initiative. I think there's a lot of people who are interested in what you're doing. And I suppose that you have a plan for 2026, like Bella mentioned earlier. There's so much things to tackle, like CBDC, SOGI, digital ID. We saw what's happening now in Europe with the food supply, livestock out there killing cattle for no reason, and we saw it with the ostriches in BC. I hope that you will be able to inspire other movement in Canada.
I want to just come right to that point as well. I've been watching the protests happening in Europe right now with killing of the cattle and having to use Bovaer. And yes, we did see that here, the CFIA with the ostriches. This morning I saw an article where there is one case of avian flu in a dog, and media ramping up the fear. But what people may not be aware of is that within the Pandemic Preparedness Treaty from the WHO and Canadian law, they do have a road to come for our livestock, for our food supply, for your pets in your home, for the transportation, for the businesses to lock it down and to be in control of it. And having CFIA put that on a dog and now ramping up the fear in the general population. But these are things that our government has put into the legislation, and if people don't dig down into it and pay attention to what they're trying to do, they aren't going to be aware of what is happening. We had our rally in Kits, November 22nd, and I came up to speak about DRIPA. what is happening in our province and DRIPA and UNDRIP. And literally, there's probably about 100 people there at the time. And I asked the question, do you know what UNDRIP is? Literally, I think 2 hands went up. That tells me we don't know a lot. And then I asked the question, do you know what DRIPA is? And I think about 3 hands to 5 hands went up. That's in a group of 100 people. That tells me that Canadians don't know what is happening within our governments. And that's where we need to educate the general population, because what our governments are doing federally and provincially is going in the back door and ramming these bills through, shutting down our debates. The people aren't aware of what is happening until we get a Cowichan case coming out. And then everybody's all up, it doesn't affect me until it affects me. And they sit on their hands and do nothing. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to take one other quick moment here to go back to that question about voting. It's a circus. It's a circus. We get it. We understand it. And then I know people are asking, well, why do you think that voting is going to make a difference? Hey, look, if you stepped up to that plate, that 1/3 of Canadians that doesn't, as a registered voter, doesn't vote, what a difference that can make. But then to the people that don't vote, why aren't you voting? And then you sit there and you complain that somebody voted. I don't get that logic, but that's just me. That's just where I went with that question. And in thinking about it, we're lambasting the people that vote because now we're under the system, but we're also not stepping up to the plate to vote, so that we're not under that system. We get the good people in there.
That's great. But I did want to say to Andre, we do have something actually that we think is going to be very effective for the entire country to get behind, and it is UNDRIP. It's DRIPA personally here for us. There's nothing more tyrannical than uprooting people from what they work for the the entirety of their life and what they're going to pass on to their loved ones. So I think moving forward, stand united. Perhaps it might be time for this country. I mean, if we were going to stand up for anything right now, what do you think people would get behind? Climate change, you can't really do anything. It's the policies. And again, too, the UNDRIP, it's the policies too. But people have already been smashed around with climate change and don't do anything about it. But I think it's going to be a completely different ball game. They don't mind paying taxes, more taxes, more taxes, more taxes, whatever. You don't see a big pushback. But when somebody's going to risk losing their land, then I think you have something there that can bring the nation together. And I believe that if we do that, everybody take the time out of your life on that day to be counted.
Yeah. The video snippet from the Richmond town hall where the older gentleman said, I bought my house and I've been paying property taxes the entire time I own that house. And now you're telling me I might not own it.
Yeah, I was actually there for that meeting, and I'm actually out of the real estate industry as a realtor for 13 years. But one of the things that is mentioned in there is the indefeasibility of title, is that when you purchase a property in Canada and in British Columbia, you have indefeasible title, which means that property in fee simple is yours. It cannot be taken. But we have a law in Canada that says Section 35 trumps that, and that is First Nation title has superior authority over that. You can't have 2 masters owning the same property. Where do we lie? And so the Cowichan decision really unearthed a big can of worms in our province, because that has detrimental effects here in BC, but straight across Canada.
Well, like I said, what happens when the bank says, I'm sorry, but we can't give you a second mortgage on your house?
Mm-hmm.
Then what?
Your investment that you even put in to buy a home is a huge downstroke. And depending on where you sit, is there another way out? It's just...
Well, EB has $150 million of taxpayer money to help them.
Oh, yeah. Let's please...
I'm being facetious.
Let's not be irritating here.
Let's not be too disruptive. Well, do we have any more questions, Peyman?
No. I think we could probably stop it there.
Wrap it up. It's been a pleasure to have you both on, and thank you for sharing this with us. The 3 of us very often say we can bitch and complain and cry all we want, but until we put boots on the ground and have solutions, we've actually done nothing. And so we're always talking about the need for collectivization and the need for collaborative effort. And here we find your group in BC has been doing that for 5 years now. and we're very grateful. I believe I've been at least one of the art gallery events, complete with the opposition and their loudspeakers, and yeah, it was more Vancouver police than I've ever seen in one location. So that's a little bit disruptive, and I'm glad to hear that these are the types of things that you're doing. Moving in on the DRIPA UNDRIPA conversation is going to be poignant because that's real money, right? That's real money. That's real ownership. That's somebody who's put 20 years of their life into a home and a property, or a business and a property, and could have it simply removed ad hoc.
Yeah.
With no recourse. And perhaps that will motivate people to be more active.
Okay. That's where I'm at. I think it should get people off their butt.
Yeah.
Understand.
Yeah.
Don't wait till the narrative affects you to do something about it.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
So how's this for? I just have a question for you all. If we put something together, are you fellas interested in supporting Stand United initiative to challenge the narrative on UNDRIP legislation, and specifically how it's going to affect home ownership and managing of Crown land and this and that?
Home ownership is something that's become very, three of us have talked about. It's shown up in several of our episodes, but we haven't gone after it as a singular topic because it's big. And then I'm going to want to go back to the BNA Act, and Andre's going to want to talk about the Quebec's influence in national law, and so we do want to go into those conversations. Absolutely.
Right on.
Well, I could say personally, you're not sovereign if you don't own your land, and protecting the land, I think it's the first thing that we need to do. I think UNDRIP is something that most people don't understand. And I would say, yes, supporting this initiative, challenging them. It's not that complicated. That's the first thing. The second thing, I want to thank you again, because Peyman mentioned earlier, he said, yesterday I didn't know what was Stand United. I'm in Quebec now. It is 6:20, 6:15. It was 3:00 in the afternoon or 2:30, and I said, "What is Stand United?" I don't even know what it is, because I'm from Quebec and because I'm not connected to BC. I made a joke. I said last year I had the problem identifying BC on the map in Canada, because that's a joke, but the idea is that to be able to promote your movement, to know that that this movement is up and alive and fighting back. It's very inspiring for first of all personally, but to promote this message for French Canadian, because many French Canadian in Manitoba, in Quebec, in New Brunswick, they don't know what is happening. And sometimes I try to act like an ambassador to say, just get out of Quebec a little bit. Just look around what is happening in BC, in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, in Nova Scotia, in Newfoundland, and try to understand that maybe Stand United, it's for Canadians. And maybe this is one great way to promote the unity of Canada, which is in really very bad shape. So thanks a lot, first of all, and Merry Christmas to both of you.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts, Peyman?
Thank you, Andre. Thank you. And Merry Christmas.
I want to thank our guests for coming on. And James, I wish you the best of luck with your upcoming political run. I hope you get in. We need people like you. So thank you again.
Thank you, Peyman. And it would be good to have you back on board in that yourself.
We'll see.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And
Yes.
we will certainly bring you again next year when we have UNDRIP is only going to get more exciting.
It's been a really enjoyable program here. You guys run a good show, a tight ship, and
thank you.
It was a pleasure. So thanks a lot for having us.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
And thank you to our guests for joining. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things. When you see us repost and when you hear about us on the street, admit everything, deny nothing. And we want to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year. We are taking the 27th of December off for Christmas and family, and we will be back, I believe, January the 3rd. We'll have something else to complain about at that time. Thanks again. Have a good night.
Bye.